Well, we have finally left Holland, Michigan, and I will say this, both Edith May and I absolutely loved the town. It's easy to see why it's been designated as one of the best places to retire in the country. It's a very nice, clean, pretty little place, and if you're ever up that way, check it out. We certainly had a good time. Now, we are on our way north to our next stop, which is Ludington, Michigan. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why Ludington? Well, absolutely no reason. It's just a hotel stop on our way to Mackinac Island, and I've never been there and thought it sounded interesting, so we're going to check it out. But before we get to Ludington, we are going to make a quick detour east to the small and I believe currently non-existent town of Sullivan, Michigan. We are going to stop and visit a place which holds lots of very happy childhood memories for me, and somewhere that I haven't been to in the last almost 50 years. Welcome to Broton Sinclair Station. This service station was my grandfather's, John Broton Sr.'s, business, which he first built himself in around 1933. He operated it up until he retired in the late 60s, early 70s, spent his whole life working at this station, expanding it, and he lived with my grandmother in that White House to the far right. Let's take a quick trip back in time and show you what it looked like in 1933 when he first opened it. This business first opened around 1933 as a small country gas station and country grocery market. After a couple years, he figured out real quick that he could make more money selling gas and fixing cars than he could selling groceries, so he converted the grocery store back into a gas station and spent the remainder of his working years running this business. He was a very well-known and respected person in the area. Of course, it didn't hurt that it was the only store within miles. Today, this property is the home of K&O Auto Sales, which is owned by Kevin Olson, and he specializes in restoring classic cars and trucks. Kevin Olson took this property over after the death of my Uncle Bob, who had run it from the time of my grandfather's retirement. I can't tell you how happy it makes me feel to see this building, which is going on close to 100 years old, still being used every day for the same purposes that it was built. Now, if you use a little bit of imagination and remove the brick fronting off these buildings, remove the green roof and take the two buildings directly to the right and remove them and paint everything else white, that was his original store. You can still see where the original gas pumps were located, just in front of that blue truck. While the gas pumps are long gone and the underground tanks have been removed, if you put a shade tree where that gray truck's parked, I can still remember my grandfather and I sitting out under it watching the cars drive by. I spent many a summer and holidays here with my grandparents, and quite honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better place to be. If you look closely, you can still see the remains of a well-beaten path that ran from the back of the station all the way over to their house just past those big trees. Gone is the Coke machine and the glass display counter where he kept his cigarettes and candy to sell. That pass-through countertop wasn't there. That was a solid wall with a single door leading back to his own personal break area and storage room. It seemed like every afternoon before the after-work rush hit, he would unlock that Coke machine, get each of us a Coke, he'd pull out his little half pint of whiskey, mix it in with his Coke, let me pick a candy bar out, and we'd sit down together in his storeroom and take a little break. You just can't buy memories like that. Having spent many hours swatting flies for him and sweeping the floor, the small little station was never cluttered. It was always just as neat as a pin. Might have been dusty, after all it was a gas station, but he kept it very well organized and very clean. This was his original garage with pneumatic hoist, and there was no insulation at that time on the walls. They were simply painted green and used as a display wall for his tires, fan belts, radiator hoses, oil cans, and oil filters. Being in the country, he had a healthy business of fixing flats and doing tune-ups. This building was a 60s add-on. It was actually a car wash, the old style type where you had to bring a bucket of quarters with you. And it was not actually attached. I didn't recall it being connected to the building. I thought you had to walk around outside to get to it, but times changed. But again, to their credit, being in the middle of the country, it was the only car wash around and did a great business. And finally, that little white house back there in the woods, that was where my grandparents lived for most of their working life. Funny, I remember it being a lot bigger. My uncle finally built them a new home right next to it, and that's where they lived out for the remainder of their lives. Well, that's it. My trip down memory lane. Thanks for coming along. See you next week.